जय हिंद, जय भारत, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi Achand. हमारे साथ I have with me Mr. Abhijit Chavda, who is, maestro, if I may say, of what he's trying to do in terms of geopolitics. And we'll have a nice, lovely conversation about what's happening inside India, outside India, little more than inside India, and of course, what's the war that India needs to prepare to fight. And finally, of course, looking like, let's take the factor that Modi Saab is back. 3.0, how does the world react to it? And that's one of the big questions we'll have to start preempting as we go into the come close to the day. So, Namaskar, sir. Thank you so much for coming in. Always a pleasure, honor to have you on the platform. Uh, Lovely conversation last time as well, and I hope to have one this time as well.
Namaskar. Thank you so much for having me. Always wonderful talking to you.
Sir ji, pehle ye batao. I mean, you cover. You've been also looking at international geopolitics quite a bit. So do I. A lot of stuff is happening in the world right now. One observation that I have is that the left is kind of getting very desperate with the way that they've done the protests in the colleges. Keen resemblance to the BLM. They wanted to hit a lot of stuff within the ecosystem or the economy of the Americans and stuff like that. How do you see these desperate actions? If I may, if you agree with me or not, I don't know. But I'd call them desperate actions of the left.
Are you talking about protests in colleges in the US?
Yes. US, UK,
Yeah.
they've actually spread all around the place now.
Yeah.
We had a few, by the way.
We had a few. Okay. I wasn't aware. I was not looking at what's
Yeah,
happening
Ashoka
back here.
University, Azim Premji's university, and
I see.
which is that other one? Jindal University.
Okay. These private universities and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, not very surprising. Not very surprising.
Free Palestine.
Palestine. Palestine से हमारा क्या लेना देना? I don't get it.
Oh, Kashmir
Even when
connection, no?
Kashmir connection. Yes, of course. Somehow Palestine and Kashmir are connected, apparently.
Somehow.
So when it comes to the US, we know that there's been this complete academic capture of the colleges and universities and the entire ecosystem by the West, and this has been brewing for quite a few decades. And now it's very, very, very apparent. It's very obvious. People get cancelled. Reputed professors get thrown out. People have to move out and go somewhere else, and all that is happening. And these days we are witnessing this very strong pro-Palestine, anti-Israel sentiment in the United States campuses, which is very strange. I recently had Dr. Brian Keating on my podcast. He's a physicist, he's a cosmologist, and he is witnessing this. He is of Jewish origin, and it's amazing that this nation, the US, which one would say is the strongest ally of Israel, you see this sentiment, this very strong sentiment that is pro-Palestine and anti-Israel. Uh, he was saying it's outright anti-Semitic and all that. So yes, and we know the connection, like you just mentioned, between the pro-Palestine sentiment among these Westerners and the Kashmir thing. So they always and there's this entire lobby in the US, the Rashida Tlaibs and Ilhan Omars and all that, who don't miss any chance to connect Palestine and Kashmir. Kashmir is a non-issue, as we know. I mean, the government in the past 10 years has totally, taken care of Kashmir in the sense that Kashmir is now a great place to live in. Tourism is booming like never before in decades. So Kashmir is doing fantastic. But these people, they want to use all these issues as pressure points against India. They want to use this as pressure points against India. No issues. And yeah, so now, right now, what we are seeing is this pro-Palestine protests, anti-Israel protests, but they can very rapidly be turned into anti-India protests, and either what the Khalistan thing or the Kashmir thing or any other issue. They can even bring out Manipur. Allegedly, the what minorities are under threat in Manipur also. So you'll see this in some places on social media. Especially the Christian angle, the evangelist Catholic church angle, because they are the ones who are controlling the narrative over there, and they've been in place for the past 60-70 years, thanks to Shri Nehru ji. So yes, we are witnessing this. They can bring out any of these angles whenever it suits them. And right now, we in India, we are in the general elections right now, in the middle of that. I think one phase to go, and
Yeah.
about 8 9 days before the results are out. uh, so I think the West, whoever is actually running the West, obviously it's not Mr. Biden or Miss Kamala Harris, whoever is truly running the show, the grand puppeteers, they are aware that most likely, and I hope so, Mr. Modi will come back with a big majority, and I think they're setting the stage for the actions they will take vis-a-vis narrative building and all that after Mr. Modi comes to power. So we have been seeing this for quite some time, all over social media. All these disposable minions, the think tank experts, the various journalists, the Guardian publication people, the New York Times, New York Post, Washington Post people, and the various Gangadins and brown coolies of Indian origin who work for these people and who are happy to write these op-eds and whatever. So they have been doing this for quite some time, at least 2 years, especially after February 2022, when Mr. Putin launched the special military operation and India refused to go ahead with the sanctions. Ever since then, they have been bombarding social media with these anti-India narratives that India is uh, it is supporting Russian fascism, and India's democracy is backsliding, and India is becoming more authoritarian and all that. So I think they are setting the groundwork, putting the groundwork in right now to attack India once Mr. Modi comes back to power in the Modi 3.0 government, it happens, which we hope it happens. And yeah, so that is where we are right now. So all of this is interconnected. The various toolkits that we speak about, the various actors on the ground in India that they have, who espouse that cause, whatever cause they are told to support, they will do that. As part of the toolkit, they'll be given a toolkit, and they'll be told all the talking points and all that, and then they just go and you know uh, they go and repeat that. All these various actors that we have within India, these disposable minions within India as well. So all of this is going on right now. They have a very good network. It's a very well established, entrenched network. Some would even allege that they have created allegedly artificial political parties in India, one or two maybe, and that can also be brought into the mix whenever required. So yeah, and I'll tell you what. When it comes to India's relations with various nations, we have good relations with almost everybody. From our perspective, we have great relations with the nations in the Middle East. We have great relations with Russia, good
Hmm.
relations with Iran, and good relations with various EU nations. And we also strive to have excellent relations with the US. And the US says that the India US relationship is the most consequential relationship of the 21st century, blah, 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 blah. But I see a split happening at some point in time, India US split. The Americans see India now as a long term adversary, as a long term competitor, at least, if not adversary. We are not the hegemonic kind of nation that China is, so we're not going to be like that. But yes, India's economy is growing. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that, and that's not very good for them. So the only utility, India has limited utility from the US perspective. They see us as a good viable counterweight to China, but that's all, not nothing more than that. They don't want to see India rise to 10 trillion, $15 trillion economy status. So we're going to see more tensions between India and the US. At some point, there's going to be some kind of decoupling of sorts, and the way forward is not going to be very very smooth sailing. It's going to be increasingly rocky. That's the way I see it.
That's interesting because when you look at what Mr. Modi is also saying, कि भाई 4 जून के बाद हम देखेंगे कितना कौन बोलता है.
Hmm.
So that also means that they are, and as a matter of fact, one of the interesting things that both Mr. Jaishankar and Mr. Modi have mentioned during their interviews is that we know there is a global elite. Mr. Jaishankar the other day on Smita's this thing, he said what a international Khan market. They didn't kind of mention
Okay.
the proverbial deep state, and you don't want to say these words, right? But you've kind of
Hmm.
called them out. How do you see this call out? Because this is the first time probably a nation, I don't see anybody else, even Russia for that matter, calling out the internal game within the Americans. It's not the external enemy that you're talking about. You're talking about, we know what happens behind the curtains, and we'll deal with you when the time comes. Now that is a very interesting sort of a call out. How do you look at it?
Uh, I think it's no secret that there exists this deep state, this
Yeah.
network that truly controls the reins of power in the US. By now, it's clear to those who have any understanding of the way things are that the US is no democracy. It's a two-party state, and that too is the official thing. So behind that, it's an autocracy. It's an authoritarian nation masquerading as a democracy. It doesn't believe in international law. They recently they have lashed out at the International Court of Justice. They want to sanction that, and they are like, no, sovereignty is the most important thing for us. We don't, you know. We will not compromise on our sovereignty. So that makes it very clear that every nation that goes ahead and goes along with what the ICJ says is kind of losing sovereignty, and only the US has the right to be a sovereign nation. So we know the way things work in the US, but I think calling it out openly is kind of a dangerous thing to do. I'm not sure if it's the right thing, you know, because the deep state, I mean, what we call
They're
the deep state,
powerful.
it's been very, very powerful. They've taken out US presidents. I mean, few of them have been lucky. Like Nixon was lucky that he was only impeached and thrown out. We know what happened to Kennedy. He was 1963, and I was worried that even Donald Trump could be 1963, you know, because he's not on the good side. And he's spoken about what cleaning this, draining the swamp in Washington.
Draining the
That
swamp.
obviously is, yeah, that obviously is an allusion to the entrenched deep state, the unelected, permanently in
Bureaucracy.
power people, yeah, in the Pentagon and wherever else, in Maryland, etc. So it's interesting that I was not aware of the fact that Dr. Jaishankar had spoken about this, the international Khan market, which obviously is an allusion to that only, the global elites. Khan market is the Delhi wala elites, so international Khan market is the global entrenched elites. So the extra democratic power centers that exist in the world, and they obviously, we know where they exist. I mean, we'll not go into the details, but it's interesting that he has actually spoken about this. What does that tell us? It tells us that I think things are coming to kind of a head, and it's becoming quite open now that the US
Mhm.
is very strongly and very blatantly trying to hamper India's growth. I'm not saying India's rise, because we're not trying to rise as a geopolitical militaristic power, but we are growing as an economy. And the way to stymie India's future rise, so to say, is to hamper India's economic growth, and to create various kinds of narratives about India. Because if you want to hamper India's economic growth, you have to create a narrative that India is an authoritarian nation, a fascist state, blah
Hmm.
blah blah, so that
Hmm.
liberal democracies will be hesitant to work with India. And if a nation in the EU wants to invest in India, and have a partnership, then you can call them out and say that, hey, you're partnering with an authoritarian nation, and their leader is in the same league as Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi and Mr. Kim Jong Un and whatever. But they will start using the word strong man for Mr.
Yeah.
Modi.
Mhm.
Yeah, strong man. Whenever there's a leader they don't like, they call that person a strong man. So recently, Mr. Xi Jinping went to Europe. He met with Mr. Orban and whoever else. So those were automatically termed as strong men. So they use these dog whistles, which signify certain things, and that's what's happening. So yeah, it's interesting that Dr. Jaishankar spoke about the
Mhm.
international Khan market. I think it's dangerous to actually refer to this, because that kind of brings the tensions out in the open, and that, well, it tells them that, yeah, you're fair game now. So interesting.
What do you say? Have we got a certain leverage? Because I've been kind of hinting at the fact of quite often, and I've said this on my
Hmm.
platform, that the deep state, as per se, has been negotiating with these guys. They now
Mhm.
realize, and you can see the realization. They're not saying Modi is not coming to power, like unlike our opposition. They're saying if Modi is coming back to power, and this is what's going to happen to India, right? So their narrative is different from what our opposition is saying. Our opposition is saying, "Oh, to jeetega nahi." I heard somebody the other day said, "हम तो 400 पार हो गए हैं." मैं बोला, अच्छा. Oh, opposition, by the way, the India Alliance. So
Okay.
that was really
Okay.
interesting. So
Okay.
that was very interesting. That's not the BJP saying. That's the India Alliance saying, "हम तो हो गए हैं 400 पार."
All
Okay,
right.
fair enough. Thank you. But do we have a certain leverage that we've pulled? Because that you won't come out and say, and both of these guys aren't loose mouths.
Mhm.
They aren't. You know, they're not the kinds who will kind of just throw out something without, not the baby with the bathwater sort of a situation. They know exactly which buttons to press. So what do you think are we working on in terms of a leverage? Your sudden moves with Russia, Iran, you're kind of exerting yourself within this particular region as well. What is it that we might have as a leverage? Actually, knowing it is impossible, actually. But your
Yeah,
opinion?
Yeah, knowing what leverage we may have, we're not supposed to know that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of impossible. But if you were to speculate, what could the leverage be? First of all, India is a giant market, a growing market, which is extremely attractive to every nation in the West, because they would like to tap into India's market, and that will help grow their economy. That's one thing I can think about. And well, when it comes to the US, well, when I talk about the West, it's essentially the US. We know it's the real leadership in the of the West is in the US. So what leverage would we have vis-a-vis the United States? I think one of the things we do is stabilize the global economy. We act as a conduit for rerouting oil from various locations, and make it more kosher when it comes to routing Russian oil, refining it. So we take the raw oil, we refine it, and then we send it across wherever whoever needs it. That's one thing we do. Uh, we are obviously a giant market, growing market, and they need that. They would like to also kind of diversify their options vis-a-vis China. Everything has been being manufactured for quite some time in China, 3 decades or so, and they need alternatives to China, because China is no longer that good manufacturing center when it comes to the price
Mm.
points, because it's becoming kind of a middle income nation, and the manufacturing costs are
That's
rising.
the flavor.
So
Yeah.
India is a good alternative. India is the only nation that can offer the scale at which things were done in China. And Vietnam
Correct.
is nimble, it's agile, it does things fast and all. But overall, long term, India is the right bet. So there is that, and obviously there's the China factor. And China right now, as we know, is well, it's at it again. It is currently in the conducting all these military exercises around Taiwan, naval exercises. It's completely encircled Taiwan. I even hear talk on social media from so-called experts that the invasion is scheduled for June.
Well,
So
with 35 ships and 45 aircraft, you can't invade Taiwan. I mean, Taiwan will wash them down with 3 sips of Coke. That's what will happen, because Taiwan is like a porcupine.
yeah,
If I was Xi Jinping, I'll stay far away from it. Keep threatening, but stay far away from it.
so they're doing that. The Chinese are doing that, and and the big problem that the West is realizing, it's coming to realize, is that the sanctions are not going to work vis-a-vis Russia.
Yeah.
And China and Russia are now consolidating together as a bloc. Even Iran is getting becoming part of it, and they don't want India to be part of that as well. I mean, if India and China can somehow work something out for at least for a few years, then and if BRICS can become a really big deal, then that's a genuine challenge to the West, because okay, we don't have the power projection abilities right now, but we have some nukes, and we have a greater combined GDP than the G7. So BRICS can become a thing, especially if we do something about the currency, which is a dangerous thing from their perspective. Come up with a currency or something. So because of all these factors, I think it's not one big leverage that we have all these various other factors that come together
Mm.
and make us an attractive nation from that perspective, that you want to keep India on your side. Okay, you're going to keep poking India, prodding India, keep on demonizing India at various degrees, but you want India on your side overall. So it's like it's like issue based cooperation. When it comes to certain issues, it's going to be all bonhomie, that yes, India and the US, the most
Uh,
consequential relationship, blah blah blah. On the other hand, quietly they will do all these things against you. They even recently threatened sanctions against India when the Chabahar thing happened, the 10-year lease. So yeah, that's the game they're gonna play. They're gonna so it's since it's not an alliance, since it's not a formal alliance, they can do whatever they want. In some issues they'll cooperate with India, in other issues they're gonna work against the interests of India and try to hamper India's economic growth. And I think more of that is going to happen as India keeps growing over the next 5 years. Assuming Mr. Modi comes to power, which I really hope he does, comes back to power, then I think we could see India's economy genuinely take off, because he's put in the work in the past 10 years, and now he can really. Uh, People keep talking about big bang reforms and all that, but significant changes will happen, and you will see more growth, and more rapid growth. And you could see India becoming a much more assertive nation when it comes to the Indian Ocean region. We are already demonstrating our capabilities in the Gulf of Aden, Red Sea region. I mean, the mouth of the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, anti-piracy operations, which also, I mean, the same operations can also be used for offensive purposes. So we are demonstrating what capabilities we have navally. And we have been testing all kinds of weapon systems, new weapon systems, a missile torpedo, cruise missile torpedo combination. That's nice. I mean, I like it, and various other things. We recently tested the MIRV technology, which
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure we had it for a long time. We had it for a long time. I am sure
For
of it.
decade, yeah.
But we, yeah, but we made the statement that we have it, and we proved that. So all that is happening. So India's military might, which is growing, is actually the real concern, I think. And India's power projection abilities, capabilities in the Indian Ocean region, that's another factor of concern for the US. Because from that perspective, the only nation that should have the ability to project power is the US. They have more than 800 military bases, extraterritorial military bases across the world, and they don't want India to kind of become an Indian Ocean power. So yeah, we're gonna see. I think we're gonna see more of this sort of thing, this mixed kind of behavior. India does have all of these factors going in its favor, which means that the US overall needs India on its side, and that's the game we can play in diplomacy. But we're gonna see more tensions overall, I would say.
The interesting, and I keep saying this, there's a, as I was saying, that there's a divide there seems to be, left seems to be kind of off its rocker a little bit, because I look at it like that, the deep state has everything, the military industrial complex, the financial structure, the aristocracy, and the deep dark, you know unmentionables as well. uh, uh, I kind of find that the money part and the defense part have kind of said, यार ये कर क्या रहे हो बेवकूफों, ये लेफ्टिज्म से पैसे पूसे नहीं बनते यार, stop this nonsense, because you see the way the pushback is starting up. Now here is where an interesting times are in front of us. You see the way that the protests are being handled in the US. Hard stick.
Oh yeah.
They're throwing out people even now, and these are Democrats throwing out people out. What is that girl's name? Riddhi Patel.
Oh,
Look at
she's
the
in jail,
video.
right?
Oh my God.
Hmm.
Uh, Out. The Brits are planning to do their Rwanda plan, right?
Hmm.
The Dutch are starting to hit, and when I say hit, they don't care, man, woman, child. They break heads. There are
Hmm.
enough videos online. This. So there's a pushback, physical pushback, as per se. The Defense Department is very interesting. Lloyd Austin, I think, mentions India more time than he mentions his wife's name in a week.
Okay.
You see his statements in the past month, and as a matter of fact,
Mhm.
today they've put out a joint working committee on India-US space cooperation.
I see.
Right, so you
Okay.
can see that, fair enough, there's a leftist part of the State Department who wants to do all this, but the pragmatics in these guys are also looking at very, very practical solutions to a whole lot of things which are happening. The engines are going forward. As a matter of fact, the first batch is supposed to be the first ingredients of the not to be transferred stuff have already reached here. Out of the
Okay.
20% that metal is come
Mhm.
here, so there's a whole lot. The drones are on time, by the way, and they might be given before time.
Okay.
They've now literally come out and said you can put your weapon systems on our F-18s, F-15s, F-16s, whatever you buy, no problem. Put your weapon systems, it's fine. We'll give you the code keys.
Okay.
What's that all about?
Yeah, so they need India on their side. I mean, there could be a confrontation with China. I mean, I don't know how likely that is, because considering the fact that China and the US are kind of joined at the hip economically.
Yeah,
You fight China, you're gonna sink your own
cripple
economy. But
yourself.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But they do want India on their side, considering everything, considering the Russia angle. I mean, I'll tell you, I get the feeling the US is more worried about the rise of Russia than about China, because they have
Ah,
yeah, Russia is the real threat. And if you look at the overall, if you look at the building blocks of real hard power,
yeah,
not soft power, all that, just hard
Russia
power,
has it.
Russia swamps away China. Russia is like 4 times, 5 times more powerful than China
Yeah,
overall, if you put everything together. China is nothing. Russia can squash China tomorrow if it wishes to. That's how powerful Russia is militarily, if it goes on an all out assault.
true.
So the Americans are worried about Russia. Russia is an autarky. Everything you need is available on Russian soil. Every mineral, every metal, oil, gas, petroleum, whatever you want is available in Russia. The Russians don't need to import anything whatsoever. So they are completely invulnerable from from the sanctions perspective. And they have China as a trading partner, and they also trade with various nations like India. India acts as a pressure release valve for Russia when it comes to the Chinese pressure. To the Americans, I think are really, they will not talk about this, they will not say it, but they are worried about Russia way more than China. And from that perspective, India becomes an attractive partner, so to say, because they want to, their stated objective is to wean India away from Russia, because we import so much. We have such an old relationship with Russia. We import so much defense equipment from Russia. We have so many joint ventures like Brahmos and whatnot with the Russians.
Now the
Uh,
engines.
the engines,
Uh,
right?
yeah. Now the latest. What are they called? The Super Sukhoi engines.
Okay, are we
So it's
getting those from Russia?
yeah. We just signed a deal for complete 100% TOT for the
Okay.
Super Sukhoi engines, which they are putting in their Su-57s right now.
Well, if that actually goes forward, that will be a game
It's
changer if that
done.
happens.
It's done. 5,250 crores. Money has already been. That's how the Russians bought this whole military equipment kits from us. So
Okay.
it was.
So are they transferring the technology for the single blade, crystal blades
So
and all that?
you will have that from the Russians
Hmm.
and you will have that from the French.
So we are getting
That's.
two TOTs.
Mm.
Okay, well, that kind of that's leverage when it comes to the US. So okay, so the point is they are really worried about our relationship with Russia. They want to wean India off Russia, and obviously you have to offer inducements for that to happen.
Yeah.
So one of the easy ways to do that is space cooperation. We are having the Artemis program. We are landing on the moon in a few years. Why don't you guys come along? We'll you can send one of your guys or girls along, and we'll take them
My God.
across.
I mean, you're perceptive. Sorry to interrupt you. You're perceptive. NASA has said we will take one of your chaps to the space station today morning.
Okay, okay, okay. I wasn't aware of that. Okay,
Freak.
there you have. So
There you go. This is fun. This is getting
I
fun
wasn't
now.
aware.
Keep
Yeah.
talking. I think
So
more stuff will come out.
so space cooperation is a low hanging fruit. There's no real geostrategic importance to that right now, technology and all that, the military abilities wise. So they can offer those lollipops, those sops to India. We'll take one of your guys or gals along to the moon. But I think India should, I would say, accept this. India should go ahead and accept the offer from the US, from NASA, but India should also develop its own space capabilities. We have human space flight program coming up. We have the new rocket, the augmented rocket. We have tested the crew capsule and all that. We have to go ahead with that by 26 or whenever it is, with a reasonable time frame. And we have to have a space station, however small or rudimentary it is,
Whatever it
by the
is.
2030s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to start taking these steps. And of course, if the Americans are offering some kind of cooperation, we should go ahead with that as well. If the French are offering something, we should take that as well. If the Russians are offering something, we should take that as well. We should be friends with everybody, and that's the path we have to follow. So the US, yeah, I think these are the real reason why America is willing to offer so many inducements to India. Like you were saying, you take the F-18s and put whatever weapon systems you want in it. We'll give you the codes and all that. That obviously is an effort to wean India away from the Russian arms market, and to take India out of the Russian
Out.
embrace from their perspective. That's what they want. And it will be, well, I don't think it's a good idea. We should embrace everybody, and we should not do away with the great relationship we have historically had with
Yeah.
Russia. Obviously, we have had some trying times in between. In the 1990s, we know what happened. Russia US started disintegrated, and we were like, the Indian politicians were daddyless. Big Daddy had disappeared. There was no daddy left. So where do we go? And that's how India got compromised in a different direction in the 1990s. But then after the coming to power of Mr. Putin, things have kind of been back on track to some extent. In the 2015s, 2020s, around that time, the Russians were flirting with the Pakistanis as well. There is still a little bit of flirting with Pakistan to some extent. So I mean, everybody is gonna pursue their own interests.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Why
So
not?
so that's all right. That's all right. So I think that's the reason why the Americans are offering so many of these inducements to India, because they are actually worried about Russia, not China. They'll make a lot of hue and cry about China, blah blah blah. But the real danger from the US is the hard edge that Russia possesses. Russia has a gigantic nuclear weapons arsenal, and they have the means to deliver those weapons. They even have technologies the Americans don't have, like a nuclear ramjet powered cruise missile that can fly for months, loiter for months, and much more, which was announced in 2019, I believe, or 2018 by Mr. Putin.
18.
So the 18, right? It was 18. So yeah, the Americans are worried about Russia, and that's the real thing that they don't speak about.
It's very interesting. One of the things before we come to the China part of it, I want to ask you is that one very interesting observation which is coming out when you were talking that I thought of is that when you're talking about global geopolitics, what are the powers being mentioned? You're talking about USA, you're talking about Russia, you're talking about India, you're talking about China. And that's it. Then
Maybe Iran to some extent.
Maybe Iran to a certain extent. But
yeah.
These are the guys that are being spoken about today.
It's four nations. It's always four nations. These are the only four genuinely sovereign nations: India, Russia, the US, Russia, China, India. That's it. There's no other nation that is fully sovereign. Not even France.
Nope.
Not even Iran. Iran is so dependent on so many things.
Yeah.
These are the only four nations that truly matter in the world.
So this is very interesting. That just tells you that the entire hawa about the European Union being a certain power center is gone. It's over.
No, it's nothing. See, I'll tell you what. If you look at people think of the US, people think of the UK still as a major power. I'll tell you what the UK is. The UK is a poor third-rate country attached to London, and London is the one of
That's
the
a good
major. It's one of the major money laundering centers of the West.
Yep.
All the money is washed in London. London is this major financial center, and it has a poor third-rate nation attached to it. That's all the UK is.
So,
Okay?
if I may, I'll just pull this up. I've actually made a map showcasing that. Right. So I've actually done that. So I'll take your review for it, guys. Some of you would know about this particular map, but there you go.
Oh yeah. We would like to see this, certainly.
So England
United Republic of Ireland needs to happen. Yes, absolutely. Republic of Scotland, yes. Northumbria, sadly.
Islamic Republic, so that's a problem.
Yes. Well, that's a problem they've created for themselves. So yeah,
so what you're saying is absolutely right.
yeah, it is. Yes, I kind of concur very much with this map. Yes, I would like to see it actually go ahead in this manner.
Yeah. Right, please. Sorry to interrupt you. Please go ahead. I thought
no problem. That was a good map. Good map. So when it comes to the UK, it's a poor third-rate nation, backward nation attached to London, and that's the only good thing about the UK is London from the Western perspective. It's one of the global money laundering hubs. When it comes to the EU, the EU is essentially Western Europe, and there is a lot of big intersection of the EU with NATO as well. So when it comes to the EU, the entire structure and foundation of the EU is such that there is pooled sovereignty, which means none of the nations that are part of the EU are genuinely sovereign. A significant portion of the sovereignty is sent to Brussels, and Brussels has so much power, even though it's a kind of an unelected, thing. Brussels, which is the headquarters of the European Union. Similarly, we have NATO. NATO also has pooled sovereignty, which means any nation that's a part of NATO, it gives away a part of its sovereignty and military control to the NATO headquarters. And the NATO head will typically be somebody from Europe, either some northern European country or Germany or whatever. But the real power is obviously in the US. Similarly, when it comes to the EU, the real power is in the US. So the EU nations are nations that aren't really sovereign, and as you can see, these nations are being ruined now economically through various means. Various policies are being enacted that are starving these nations of much needed energy. Look at Germany is the best example. Their entire economic engine was being powered by cheap gas coming in from Russia. To power an economy, you need energy, you need abundant energy, you need plentiful readily available energy and cheap energy. That's how an economy booms, and that's been cut off. The Nord Stream thing happened. The Russian gas no longer comes. They are now burning coal. They've switched off their nuclear power plants. Are you crazy? Are you crazy? But that's what they're doing. So the entire EU economy is going backwards, and then there's the immigration factor. I mean, the one thing the Third Reich had was racial purity. Racial purity. So you want to destroy. I mean, the I think the Americans are still worried about Germany. I mean, whenever they think of Germany, they remember the Deutschland über alles, and they see those marching boots, they see the
Mm.
Hugo Boss uniforms. So what they're doing is they're robbing Germany of its racial purity, and all the other EU nations also, through this artificial mass immigration that's been going on for such a long time. There could be some token moves to limit immigration and let's say deport some people, but I think we are far too late for that. The horses have bolted now. That's how I see it. So I see the EU as well. It's not a geopolitical power center. There is no power in the EU. The only EU, I mean, the only power is, when it comes to Western Europe, the only power, the true power, is the US, even though it's geographically not part of Western Europe. So in Europe, we have two power centers. One is the US, the other is Russia. That's how it is.
That's I you bring about a very interesting sort of a paradigm which is actually opening out here, is because where you see and this is where you see the whole, if you look at wokeism as per se, you mentioned the boots, and that's where wokeism comes into my mind. Recently I was reading about why wokeism was created and this and that and all that nonsense, and when you look at wokeism today, doesn't it look like the marching boots of Germany with
Oh,
instead of
absolutely.
the Nazi swastika, you've got the what is that? That
Whatever it is,
whatever that multicolored stupid thing
that
which that
flag,
they
yeah, the
wear.
rainbow flag.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it is authoritarianism, it's fascism, it's the same thing. It's completely authoritarian, it's completely ad hoc. Whatever they decide today is the new
That's
thing,
it.
new in thing.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
there's no logic, there's nothing. And what do they really stand for? They stand for nothing. They stand for whatever their puppet masters decide is important today. So yes, it is very much the same thing. It is very much fascistic, authoritarian, dictatorial, all of that. They demand unquestioning obedience. And they say that if the resistance is futile. That is, I mean, what else is it? It's another form of Nazism, fascism, or authoritarianism. And they claim to be what? The good people, the ones who are liberal, and where's the
Tolerant and
liberalism? Tolerance, where's the tolerance? They tolerate nothing. They tolerate no
nothing.
dissent. Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah. So that's
People like
another.
you and I
So
will get beaten up. I mean, let's be clear. They'll thrash people like us, yeah, for speaking the
yes.
way we are speaking. If we walk in, let's say, California or somewhere like that, where it's Wookistan, oh boy,
Why are you
we're
not
in
gay?
deep trouble. Yeah. I mean, I
So
have no
yeah,
problem with being somebody being gay or anything like that.
I
But the
have no problem
point
with not
is,
being gay, with anyone being gay. Yeah, but
I mean, I have friends
yeah.
who are
So
gay, but that's okay. The point
yeah,
is about and by the way, the gay people that I know, if so I sometimes somebody will call me up, LGBTQ, kya ho raha hai? Marunga tere ko. That's the only thing that comes out from that. Don't call me that. I hate
mm,
that. And they are so, they don't like this. This boss, this is you're what are you doing?
exactly. What are they doing? I mean, they have brought this entire sexuality thing to the forefront of everything. That's none of anyone's business what you do in
Yeah,
your private life.
yeah, yeah.
But today, your entire identity is about what you do in your bedroom. So I don't know what sort of thing this is, but yeah, it's a great means of controlling people.
Yep, yep,
Very
yep. And
powerful means of controlling people.
as I was saying, to me, it really looks like the Fourth Reich.
It is, yeah, kind of, yeah, very
You,
much,
you,
completely intolerant, and yeah, I mean, they have these the entire armies at their disposal now. They say a word, and this army will be unleashed on campuses or wherever they want.
I'm going to ask you one more before we come to discussing how we can protect ourselves. But my last question to you before this particular subject would be on China.
Hmm.
And China is interesting this time. They've kind of kept quiet. Global Times has been spewing Gober all the time. That's okay.
Yeah.
Gober Times will do that. Uska naam hi wahi hai. I don't have a problem with that. And we keep talking shit about China. They keep talking shit about us. It's fine. It's okay. Perfect. And that's kind of, I think, where India China relations have come down to. Just keep talking shit. Army jo kar rahi hai, bande jo kar rahe hain, wo kar rahe hain. Governments are antagonizing with each other. You're playing the games. But nobody wants to escalate the situation into a military, this thing. Both sides, you
Mm.
can see that.
Yeah.
But China has been quiet. This election has, I really thought China would, you know, play the game. Narratives, something coming in from China. Neville Roy Singham seems to be too busy with the protests in America rather than doing anything here. That's a very interesting sort of a game. And I was speaking to some China watchers. They're saying you're right. I mean, if you read what people are saying within China, and I've actually covered this in one of my podcasts. What are the biggest authors in China who write about geopolitics? What have they said? Out of the five that I watched, two of them said Hindutva,
Mm.
and they quoted sources from DW and France 24 and you know what, all the leftist these
Yeah.
things.
Mhm.
One said, well, you know what, Modi's done well for India. Why the hell not? As a matter of fact, he went ahead and said, the a lot of Indians complain about dirty streets and stuff like that. He said, you should come and look at us when we were in the 90s. We were the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Totally.
India will, there's no problem. We're on the right track. And he was very appreciative about it. But at the end of it, he said they're overstepping. You can't ever beat China, this, that, and all
Of
that.
course. Yeah.
Okay. And two of them, very interestingly, kind of didn't submit to Modi's victory, but they said this is inevitable. So all five pretty much accepted Modi's coming in. Two of them were Hindutva, so probably trained in Stanford or Harvard somewhere. And this is what I observe of it. Any observations that you have about China? Why is it so quiet this election?
It's very interesting to see the Chinese reactions and the Chinese attitude overall the past few months. Of course, like you said, there's been this barrage from both sides. Mostly the Chinese Global Times and their spokespeople about Zalengan or whatever the hell they call it and all that. They're renaming a few locations, geographic locations, blah blah blah. All this stuff, standard Chinese activities and actions. But here's the thing: uh, there are see in this election there are two options, right? There's Mr. Modi and the BJP, and then there's the India Alliance or whatever it's called, and all that. Now, from the Chinese perspective, let's examine both scenarios. One, Mr. Modi comes back to power, and they know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, they know
Yeah,
how to deal with Mr. Modi. They know
deal
what
with
the
it.
yeah,
Mhm.
what it is. They know how it is for the past 10 years, so they know how to deal with Mr. Modi from their perspective. Now, the alternative is that Mr. In this very unlikely, completely ridiculous hypothetical scenario that Mr. Modi doesn't come back to power and the India Alliance or whatever it is, some kind of coalition comes to power, then what does it mean for China? I mean, who's gonna have more influence over this Khichdi coalition externally? Will it be China or will it be somebody from the West? Now, imagine
That's the problem.
what sort of Indian government you will see then. It will be completely controlled from outside by the West, and that is something that would send shivers down China's spine.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So because of that, it is so strange that they actually would probably want Mr. Modi to come back to power.
Yeah.
And
I
I don't
came
think
to
the
the same
Chinese.
conclusion. Honestly, I came
Hmm.
to the same conclusion. I did not mention it in my question, but if you and the audience who's watching the show have seen that one as well, I came to the same conclusion. I said, yeah, why would the Chinese want Monday को कोई और, Tuesday को कोई और, Wednesday वो बोलेगा यार ये तो bloody this is a nuclear power country. We
Hmm.
get bossy two more divisions. Please send to the LOC otherwise before these guys do something stupid.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely correct.
And I don't think the Chinese have any issue whatsoever with Hindutva or any such thing.
No.
From their perspective, they are, I mean, right, these days they are Chinese nationalists and they are very much you know, they do respect Chinese culture. Now, I mean, we know the history of the Chinese Communist Party. They destroyed so much of China's cultural heritage, but today they kind of want to honor that, and they are completely fine with India having whatever culture it has. So the Chinese have no issue with India being a Hindutva nation or I don't know, not Hindu Rashtra or whatever. They have no issue with that. They're only concerned with the, like, in physics there's something called the black hole
Hmm.
no hair theorem, in which a black hole, no matter what is inside, it is only described by three parameters: mass, charge, and angular momentum. Only three things. So from the Chinese perspective, they only want to look at India from an external perspective. They don't care what happens inside, but what does it mean for China from the security perspective, from the border perspective? That's all they're concerned about. So I don't think the Chinese have any issue with Hindutva or any such thing. They're only concerned about the stability of India, and they also want India not to become, too much. Well, they don't want India to go too much on the Western side. They want
Hmm.
India to actually be a more independent minded nation, the way it is right now, with an independent foreign policy and a multipolar approach. So that is actually what works great for China from their perspective, and that's what they would want to continue. So it is so strange, but the world has brought us to a place where the Chinese actually want Mr. Modi to come back to power.
And they love all the New York Times articles coming out because they know the relationship is getting more antagonized.
Oh yeah.
I won't be surprised if the Chinese are funding them. Oh, or like, you know, Indians are getting mad or like paise pusile. Now, we were talking leverage at the beginning. I want to close this discussion before we take some audience questions on to leverages. What do you think we should do more?
uh,
Big question, I
what we
know.
should
It's a tough one.
No, no,
I've been
it's very
thinking about
simple
it
actually.
for okay, fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot you can do in the details, but from big picture, 30,000
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
feet
30,000 feet. Yeah.
perspective,
Shoot.
yeah, from that perspective, just keep your heads down and grow your economy. Work, work, work. Keep growing the economy. That's what needs
Mm.
to happen. The economic growth is the first, has to be the only priority, the first priority. Everything else comes later, because over the next 5 years, if there is, let's say, 6%, 7% growth, India is going to be in a whole different league. We would want to have 8, 9, 10% growth, but even 6, 7% growth is decent in the current economic environment. And if you have that sort of growth for the next 5 years, India is going to be in a whole different league. Even the Chinese will not want to mess with India, because with economic might comes military might, military muscle,
Military.
and we're going to be able to afford many more naval assets, air assets, and whatnot, and whatever else comes with that. So the one focus India needs to have is economic growth. I know that we need a lot of changes when it comes to the education system and a lot of reforms and other things, but okay, that also needs to happen. But the major priority has to be economic growth. And if you do that, then you have leverage over everybody, because you're a growing economy. You are a market with more demand, massive, the world's second, no, the world's largest market now, with a massive demand, and a consumer driven market, which is so attractive for everybody, including the Americans, whatever their attitude otherwise may be. So just keep on doing that. That has to be the one thing. And we have to invest in the Navy, and we have to invest in distributed lethality. I'm tired of concentrating lethality. I mean, I don't know what the thought process is, but we need to have distributed lethality in the Indian Ocean region. Lots of different kinds of assets which give us a tremendous power projection ability. I mean, a missile boat costs what, 20-30 million dollars, but it's so dangerous. I mean, we took Karachi down in 1971 with cheap missile boats, but we want to build this ginormous aircraft carriers which are such enticing targets, invest in submarines which are invisible and so dangerous. So I would say economic growth and invest in the Navy. India should be a maritime power. We have a god gifted geographical location, we dominate the Indian Ocean region. Why should we not take advantage of that and leverage that? We are cut off from all our historical neighbors, because of Pakistan and Chinese occupied Tibet. So we have to invest in the Navy and become a gigantic maritime nation. We are going to have the funding, the means to do that. So we need to do that. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on. And the recent deployments and the recent work which is actually taking place as far as the Navy is concerned, that does show a lot of positive light. Uh, I-75, AIPs, they are talking about
Hmm.
new missile boats, as a matter of fact. I think
Okay.
Goa shipyards or one of the two, Goa or one of another one, is now preparing a small mock-up design to kind of show. And they were
Okay.
firing these last week. They did test firing of these missiles,
Uh-huh.
which they want to fit into these boats and all. The Navy is a step ahead. Yeah, Navy is. I wished
I'm
all
glad.
Navy is a step ahead. I mean, I wish all
Hmm.
our government agencies work like the Navy. They design their own stuff. They bloody build it.
Hmm.
They do. The Navy Design Bureau is a step ahead. Trust you me, they're the plans that they've got on books. Somebody gives them the money. My God.
Hmm.
Mm. It's going to be crazy. But I'll add to, if you don't mind, one thing that you've said is, I would say that play one against the other. That's one of the biggest things that we should be able to do. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's play great politics. That's something that we'll have to do quite a bit, because I think the political game going forward is going to be dangerous. It's going to be tough. It's going to be demanding. So
Mhm.
create physical leverages to play the politics that you'd like to play, and kind of work the game out. So that's something that I would add to your
I
wonderful
agree. Yeah.
answer, if you permit me,
Yeah.
sir.
Of course.
So guys, please hit the like buttons. There's only one like button, but hit all the buttons except the dislike one on
Smash
the.
the button. Smash it.
No, I say that the think there is a Pakistani there and hammer it. Little Pakistani sitting there. "Ta!" आवाज आना चाहिए. So like करो जोर से. You guys all know what YouTube is doing to all of us, right? I'm sure Abhijit Saab will also agree to me that YouTube has put down all our nationalistic voices. हमारी volume थोड़ी कम कर दी है उन्होंने. थोड़ी नहीं, actually about काफी ज़्यादा कम कर रखी है, but that's okay. That's all right. We'd fight the system. As a matter of fact, me and Sanjay ji tried doing negative gaming a little bit. I don't know if he's still doing it or not, but I stopped. I said, yeah, enough. Let them put me down, but I am not doing negative messaging. It's subliminal negative messaging. Instead of saying how big Modi Saab is going to win, the other day I did a show, Modi Saab has lost.
Okay.
So I did an interview with Joyita Basu. You would not believe it. I had 1,300 likes on the screen and 5 people watching the show.
What? That's amazing. Okay.
5. It came down to 5. Numbers were reducing.
Okay. I
It was
see.
like that.
That's
It was
interesting.
crazy, crazy, crazy. So, guys, please, yeah, Shalini ji just reminded me there were 9 also. And there were 9 people saying one,
Okay.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are more of us here. How is it showing what it's showing? And that's the game. Even now, what the
Mm.
number you will actually see watching, and by 2 days later, when you actually get your report in YouTube, you'll find a discrepancy right there as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
they're doing all sorts of funny things. It's
Mm.
insane. So guys, please like, subscribe, and of course, yes, after the stream finishes, you guys all need to write a comment about what you felt about what we discussed. Your thoughts are critical for us to get new ideas, new thoughts for making new videos. So please do write your comments, your thoughts. Lamba lamba comment. अच्छा 3-3 पेज का लिखो. कोई बात नहीं. I read most of them. So please do write the comments, and of course, yes, you can contribute towards this channel using the QR code or the PayPal in the link below, or you can contribute through super stickers, super chats, or becoming members. Let's see who goes first. Sabse pehle, Problem. I think. Thank you so much. Universities are being hijacked for geopolitical propaganda. Is deep state desperate trying to accommodate these thugs, especially being an election year? May I add, haven't universities been always the center of this jack, as per se?
Yes, universities have traditionally in the US. I mean,
Yeah.
if you remember the days of the Vietnam War, there were these tremendous protests against the policies of the US government. I think at that time it was more organic, but the American, let's say, deep state, they recognized the power of the student protests, and they kind of took it in a certain direction by, well, the means that they used by turning all these institutions into strongholds of the left. So yes, now it's a machine that they have, that they can unleash on demand. And yes, so during election years, or during whenever something is happening, if you want to pressurize Israel, despite it being your partner or your ally, you can use these things to apply pressure.
Hmm. Akash ji, thank you so much for your contribution. Oh, sorry, my apologies. He says, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. To you as well, sir. Dr. MPC, thank you so much, says 3 days ago, Pakistan's ISS seminar about Indian maritime build-up, they mentioned two strike capability and secret nuclear triad of Pakistan. Is that true?
Okay, look, the Pakistanis will make all kinds of claims. The deal is this: India and Pakistan, we don't want to go to war, and we definitely don't want a nuclear war. And we Indians will not start a nuclear war. But if a nuclear war is started by the Pakistanis, there will be no second strike. It will be the end of Pakistan once and for all. It's gonna be five. It's gonna last 5 minutes. That's it. India will, of course, take some damage, but we are a gigantic nation. We are capable of taking damage. Then we're gonna move on from that. But Pakistan will cease to exist. So I don't know. I don't care what they claim and all that. The moment the next war, if it happens between Pakistan and India, will be the end of Pakistan. That is a guarantee.
Have you read Annie Jacobson's book on the nuclear war?
No, I've not.
Oh, freak. Actually, you should watch either the Joe Rogan podcast. No, Joe Rogan has not done the new one. The Lex Friedman
Mhm.
podcast on, oh my, it'll scare the daylight out of you.
Okay.
She says 72 minutes before, after the nuclear war starts, 5
Mhm.
billion people are gone.
Okay. So she's referring to a war between the US and the Russians, I would
She says
imagine.
anywhere in the world. She says anybody fires a nuke, there will be,
Uh-huh.
after that, it'll be open season.
I see. Okay.
That's what she's kind of come up with. It was, I mean, I would say, I think people should believe that, because that's a scary scenario that I guess we have
Yeah, yeah.
forgotten. You know,
Hmm.
the guys in the 60s and 70s who used to analyze a lot of things had that picture in mind of Hiroshima, Nagasaki. We don't
Hmm.
have that today.
We don't have that. Yeah.
So today's analysts are a little too loose with the nuclear word, and today's
Yes.
politicians, I guess, are also too loose with the nuclear word, and that kind of scares me a little bit sometimes. So
Yeah, you never want to have nuclear weapons ever being used in the future.
no, mm,
No, you don't.
no. Soham, thank you so much. Says, sirs, we can see something like caste fluidity, or
Okay.
transcasteism,
Okay.
akin to gender fluidity in the future in India. Raga's rant seems to portray that caste is a major weak point in Indian society in general. And Soham, you're scaring me here.
Okay. I've never thought about caste fluidity or transcasteism. I don't know. Yeah, I'm speechless over
Actually, you
here.
know what? If I may say something, we are
Huh?
transcasteist.
Okay.
Why? Because is the so-called, the Jati Varna sort of a debate, like
Yeah.
Shudra and this and that. You can be who you want.
Actually, you can, of course, through your
So
profession, through your
this
actions.
actually fits really, really well. Fluidity, yeah.
Hmm.
You. I was doing the Shudra, which is labor work, and now I've become
Um,
a Brahmin who wants to study, X, Y, Z. So fair enough.
yeah. So yeah, from that perspective, yeah, very good
I think
perspective. Yeah, makes sense. So today
it
it's
does
up
make
to you
sense.
what you want to be. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
What
It's great.
What about the second part? I mean, I personally feel when the UCC does come into to play, and I don't care what this monkey says here and there, but I do feel when the UCC does come into play, they will bring about that divisive sort of a card that they play every time within India to create that typical protest within on the streets.
Oh, I'm sure that'll happen. I mean, for a small issue like the farm laws and all that, they brought out these things, if you remember. So yeah, any change that is implemented that's gonna be good for India in the long run, you're gonna see this toolkit thing come out. You're gonna see these protests being unleashed. I mean, this happens the other countries as well. Recently, Netanyahu tried to change the judicial system in Israel, and on demand, tens of thousands of protesters came out on the streets. So yeah, if the UCC is implemented in Modi 3.0 in the third term, you're gonna see a significant pushback against that. It's gonna be all astroturfed protests, but yeah, it's gonna be very visible. They're gonna ensure that happens, and the media will be very happy to cover that 24/7 as long as it lasts.
But I think, Soham, I'd really like to thank you for bringing that thing up. It's given me something to think about as well, because this narrative can be right, if it does come out, nipped in the butt right there and said, boss, yeah, that's what we are. So
Hmm.
you know they get scared when you say, yeah, so what's wrong in that? You're not getting offended? No. Oops. So once again, thank you so much, sir. Sirs, one popular analysis says Indian intelligence agency are moving out of Western spy software towards own ones, and West will cause chaos in the near term. Your view?
I think it is a very good idea to not use any Western software, any Western gadgets. I mean, most of us we use these phones, whether it's Android, whether it's iOS, or whether it's a Chinese made thing or whatever. It's dangerous. I mean, I know of so many government agencies at various levels that use Gmail addresses, which means you're totally transparent and open. they can see what's happening. uh, so I don't know what the situation is like, but whatever softwares are being used, whatever platforms are being used, servers are being used, they all need to be based in India and built in India, I would say. That's the only way to ensure that you are reasonably secure.
Absolutely. Thought provocator, thank you so much. Coming soon, Nobel Prize for inventing new genders.
Well,
I'll give. There's a new one I heard, Ziz and Zer.
yeah, I've heard that
Z I S.
XER. Okay, Z
Oh, okay.
also. Okay.
I think we both are. Okay, then we both. I think we both have learned something new right here. you know, by the way, I'll tell you a small thing. I got, uh, I got locked out of Facebook for a while,
Okay.
right?
Uh-huh.
Not because Facebook, because my own mistake. I forgot the password or some crap like that when I changed my phone.
Okay.
I'm not very into social media. I do Twitter just to get inputs and see what's happening. I don't like posting that much. मैं करता हूँ थोड़ा बहुत. Now I'm kind of forcing myself to do it. Before, Instagram is just there. I post one odd reel sometime here and there or something. I'm
Hmm.
not very. I don't like it that much.
Hmm.
And so-called YouTuber saying that is quite ironic. But uh, one thing that I've noticed is, this whole the narratives that are spun across, and the game that is basically played with a whole lot of this gender and this and that. So I was telling you about Facebook. What happens is, I got locked out and I wanted to log back in, right? So I put
Hmm.
my email address, I put my password, and it takes me to
Hmm.
this new function where you add your gender.
Okay.
So okay, looking for male. There have 57 of them, and I couldn't see male anywhere. So I said, okay, that's
Uh,
thank you very much. I'm done. I don't have. I do have a Facebook page. If you find it, it'll be there, but
mhm.
I don't use it anymore.
Okay.
It's so irritating. I don't know what a cisgendered male is.
No, I have no idea.
My
No idea
friends told me
whatsoever.
that's what you are, so you just put that thing there. I said, how do you know I am that?
Okay.
And they all looked at me like, are you gay? I said, no. But who made me a cis whatever male? I mean, I'm
Cisgender.
just a male.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's how it works there. It's crazy. Typhoon, thank you so much. Samir gave it back to the Chatham House a mouthful. Samir Saran.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a interesting talk.
I see.
Must watch. Okay. Dr. MPC, thank you so much. Sir, is CPEC China's wartime backup trade route rather than a benefit for Pakistan? Minimal traffic maintained for upkeep, and Pakistan pays the dues. Smart.
Is CPEC China's the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor China's wartime backup trade route? Well, if there's a war and India is involved in the war with Pakistan, do you think India will allow the Chinese to use this thing? Yeah, I don't see it working that way. A wartime backup war. If India is not involved in the war and China is routing things through the CPEC, then India would be genuinely irritated. But maybe we don't do anything.
Mhm.
But if the Chinese are involved in the war with the US, then the Americans won't allow this to happen because the Americans have a significant say in Pakistan these days. Ever since Mr. Imran Khan has been jailed, so yeah, not quite like that.
Soham, once again, thank you. Says, sir, human paranoia ever let AI succeed?
AI will succeed whether we humans are paranoid or not. I mean, if the AI companies keep on running, keep getting their funding and they keep doing the development work, well, AI will do what AI does.
Yeah. Shivam Bakshi, thank you so much. Says, India's foreign policy becomes stronger at $5 trillion.
I think your hard power is always a factor in your foreign policy. Your the kind of leverage you have on the negotiating table, it is all dependent on the hard power, which is your economic power and your military power, and whatever else power projection abilities you have. So if you are a $5 trillion economy, you have a different kind of leverage. If you are a $15 trillion economy, you have a whole different kind of leverage. So the larger your economy is, the more leverage you have in any negotiation. So yes, I agree.
Right. Soham, thank you once again. He says, many papers written on caste fluidity, caste mobility in international scientific journals checked on Google. Scopus Sci Hub propped up recently. Thanks, man. Can
Okay,
you send me some
interesting.
stuff? I'd like to have a look at this. Thank you so much. Rahul Lakshman says Israel made the mistake of not co-opting with the left.
Look, Israel has its own left, and
Yeah,
that left is
the
always
worst
is
one.
often used.
The worst one. They've got. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
there's a friend of mine from Israel. Okay, Gabriel
Uh
is an Indian Jew. Indian
huh.
Jew. So he says, there's nothing worse than a leftist Jew.
I can imagine. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He actually says that he's like, these guys are terrible. There's nothing worse than
Mm.
them. We also hate them. So
Yeah, so Israel has its own left problem, and the Israel left seems to be kind of hand in glove with the US left. And whenever something happens that the US doesn't like, then the left is unleashed on the streets of Israel. Just like
yeah,
the farmer protests happened in India, the same sort of thing happened when Netanyahu tried to reform the judiciary. And the entire Israeli left came out on magically on demand, like tens of thousands of them on the streets. So yeah, there you have it.
just before we take the next one, guys, just a public service announcement. I know a lot of you guys are staying in the eye of the cyclone. A lot of my friends, Kunal, and all of you guys are staying in that area. Stay safe. My, heartfelt prayers with you. Stay inside, and I hope everything just blows over. No pun intended. And you guys are all right. So please stay safe and let us know if we can help. Raghunandanji, thank you so much for this very interesting question, I must say. So, is there going to be another partition of India? This time, Christian will take piece of land where they are becoming a majority in TN. So, your views. Actually, I spoke to Rami ji some time ago about the Northeast.
Okay. Uh-huh.
She mentioned a very interesting paradigm, which I kind of agree with 100% with the Northeast being kind of converted to create that buffer space for themselves.
Hmm.
So, do you think something like that is under the plan?
Uh, I don't see this as something they're doing to create a new partition in India. The evangelistic activities and all the mass conversions and all that's going on in various parts of India. In the far east of India, only Manipur is left. Manipur has Hindus and everything, and Assam is left to a certain extent, and to some extent Tripura. But Nagaland, Mizoram, Meghalaya, much of it is all Christianized, thanks to Shri Nehruji. When it comes to southern India, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, we hear of all these activities. Kerala as well. In the north, you have Punjab, where very strangely there's so much Christianization happening. It's all being done on a industrial scale with financial incentives and shops being offered to people for conversion. So it's not something that people are getting spiritually alienated from their traditions, but they are actually being offered incentives to convert. So I don't think the objective is to create more divisions or more partitions of India. The objective is to overall eventually take India over and totally hijack India, just the same way the Byzantine Empire and the Roman Empire were hijacked. The same sort of thing.
I'll add they're giving Canadian citizenship if you convert
Okay.
in Punjab.
Okay. Well.
Mhm.
Hmm. Which would
Ground.
indicate that the Canadian government seems to be involved in some manner.
Yeah, I've actually done an exposure, which is where my channel got kind of kicked.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
I did an investigation on this and how Canada does this. And there are 3, 4 people that I had named in that video, and I
Okay.
got reduced quite badly after that.
I see. I see.
Mm.
Hmm.
So there are few politicians within India who give certificates of police brutality,
Okay.
and they charge 3 to 6 lakhs per certificate.
Okay. And that way you can apply for asylum in a
Yep.
nation like Canada.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the whole
Hmm.
farmers' protests are done so that you can come and give some ridiculous statement, get recorded, get your
Hmm.
photograph in some stupid media, this thing. So
Hmm.
media hounding you, public hounding you, sort of a thing, and then do something atrocious so that police files a case against you,
Hmm.
and then you get that certificate signed and you're out.
Okay.
So the Farmers 2.0 was basically to have that going, and you realize by the immigration application numbers, 2022 it was 3,200 some people. In
Hmm.
2023 it was 10,000 people.
Okay. Okay.
So I went on to their website. I did a whole bloody 6 days. I sat down and did this research.
Mm.
And I got great viewership, huh? 28,000 views.
I see. Okay. Well.
Yeah. Akashji says China, on the one hand, is a vassal state of the US, and on the other, apparently, it is the US that funded and propagated the most terror outfits globally. A heady cocktail. Your views?
So I would not regard China as a vassal of the US. Vassal state means it is a vassal lacks sovereignty,
Hmm.
and much of the sovereignty is taken over by the state of which you are a vassal. China is not a non-sovereign nation. China is a fully sovereign nation. Yes, it is joined at the hip economically with the US, and China has benefited a great deal from this. But China has a completely independent foreign and military policy, which means that it is completely sovereign and it is not a vassal of anybody. Now, the US has the other part of the statement. The US has funded and propagated most terror outfits globally. A heady cocktail. Well, it is true. It's very true. Yes, whichever terror outfit you can think of, whether it's in North Africa, in various parts of Africa, in the Middle East, in Central Asia, in
In India.
India, in
Hmm.
India, across the border in India, our ancient territory, which is temporarily occupied by Pakistanis. All of this, you will see American hands in that.
Yep.
Okay, even if you go back to the 1970s, 1980s, Abu Nidal that nobody remembers today and whatnot, everywhere they had their hands. Okay, so yes, they do this so that it looks like the Americans have lots of enemies worldwide, and these terror outfits can also be used in various means. I mean, when it comes to when you had the Syrian civil war, which was an American regime change attempt aimed at removing the presidency of Mr. Al Assad. Then you had the so-called moderate rebels, what the Western media would call moderate rebels, which was Al Qaeda and ISIS. And how are they moderate rebels and so on? So the Americans
There's
use
a,
everybody.
there's a WikiLeaks email on this, right? Jake
I'm
Sullivan
sure there is.
writing
Yeah.
to Jake Sullivan writing to Hillary Clinton saying that
Okay.
AQ is on our side in northern Syria. There you
Well,
go.
I mean, right now, if you look into Afghanistan, the Taliban receives a weekly stipend of $50 million in cash from the US.
Yeah,
So,
it's increased
yeah, there
now.
you have
By
it.
the way, from Afghan
Okay,
sources, it's about 80.
80 now. Okay, good, very good.
Yeah, because they're helping them for a certain thing in the Central Asia. So
Okay. Hmm.
Tajikistan is becoming a hub center of ISIS,
Yes.
and the Americans are fighting with the ISIS and against the ISIS.
Yeah.
It's a whole mess in that area.
Yep.
The audience loved this, and I do too. 1963, your dialogue. So I thought I'll just take
Yes.
this off. That was an interesting one.
Hmm.
Shivam Saab, once again, thank you. Will India be a Hindu majority by 2050? Realistically, we are Hindu
Uh,
majority.
no, he's asking minority.
My apologies. I misread that. Yeah, okay.
Uh, Hopefully not. Our culture is what we call Hinduism, Hindutva, Hinduism, whatever you want to call it. Hinduism is not an ism. It's not a religion with one book, one prophet, all that. It's a 10,000 plus year old culture. It's a civilizational thing. It includes everything else like Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism, all that. I don't think it will go, but we have to be very careful and vigilant that we don't just become complacent and let things slide.
Dr. MPC, thanks much. He says, if temple control is given back to private trust, how would that impact conversions, and in which direction?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on this matter. I don't know if it will impact conversions or not. I think conversions, the real thing is the funding that comes in from abroad and the funding that is raised from within India using the tithe system or whatever it is, a 10% the tax that they levy on every convert and so on. So, I don't know about this really. Temples obviously need to be given their freedom, but we are far from that happening right now.
Timothy McGee has an interesting comment, and that's a very Zabardast name. If you know what I'm talking about, Timothy McGee was, if correct me if I'm wrong, the Oklahoma bomber.
There was Tim McInway or something.
Timothy
Similar name, but
McVeigh. Timothy McVeigh.
McVay.
Timothy McVeigh.
McVay.
McVeigh. Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. No, nothing personal, but just trying to just clicked a bell somewhere. Streets right now in London, say Birmingham, Manchester, are much worse. Telling this from seeing the dump in front of me as I write this message.
Yes, standards have declined. Standards have slid backwards. And yeah, like I said, the UK is a poor third-rate nation attached to London. That's what it is. And there's been this tremendous immigration of a certain flavor of people who are now bringing in their standards, and that's how the status quo has become. Sad to see that, but maybe the UK deserves it. Karma, perhaps. I
Shalini, last couple of questions. Shalini says, absolute power in the hands of US vis-a-vis Russia. Who's more dangerous?
You don't want absolute power with anybody. You don't want a situation where you have Pax Romana and they create a desert and call it peace. So we don't want that. I would be happier with. I mean, the 20th century was kind of balanced. You had two superpowers, two empires vying for supremacy, and that kind of caused some stability in the world. If you have a unipolar moment, I mean, we have a unipolar moment we had it for some time. That's not good because then one nation can ride roughshod over everybody else and arm twist everybody. uh Absolute power in the hands of nobody is what I would say. Even if it's in the hands of Russia, it doesn't mean it's a good thing. It's best to have a multipolar system, like three or four different poles with all reasonably strong nations, and then you can have a system that is not overly balanced in favor of any one power. That will be a good thing. Or otherwise, unipolar moment for India. That I would be okay with.
Chintan Sahaji, I have different opinion than both of you. One, US, Russia is no more of an ego battle than a real battle.
Okay.
You're right. You're right to a certain extent, but there's a lot more that goes into this. Would you agree, right?
Look, when you're dealing with gazillions of dollars with tremendous money, it's not about ego, it's about resources, it's about control, it's about power.
Uh,
Power over money. It's about who controls what. That's what the real thing is. And of course you can invest your ego into that. No issue with that, but it's about power and control. And obviously money is a factor, but power and control is the major thing.
was it Margaret Thatcher who gave that speech, said the richest nation in the world is Russia?
I'm not sure.
I think it was Margaret Thatcher who came out and said, it was Margaret Thatcher or it was one of these British prime ministers, the lady prime
Uh-huh.
ministers. She said, the Iron Lady, as they
Hmm.
call her. She said that trying to recall her speech. She said the richest nation and the most powerful nation in the world is the one that has everything for itself and can grow everything, can produce everything, and can control everything, and that is Russia.
That
But
certainly
the
is
only
Russia.
thing,
It's no talking.
yeah, the only thing that they lacked, and this was said, I think, in the late 80s, that the only thing, 70s or 80s, they
Hmm.
lack is the ability to give their people the power to innovate. Yeah, I get that right.
Okay.
So that's what was said, and
Mhm.
which is true actually. And now today, if you look at it, Putin is giving that power to innovate to its own people. That you're okay, you guys can do what you want to, and uh, kind of let's all grow together. So that's why you see Russia rising up. Would you agree?
I would agree. Yes, I mean he has heeded the mistakes of the USSR. He
Yeah.
has seen all of that firsthand. He was very much part of it at a different level, and yeah. So I think Putin is a great, a very serious student of history, as is evident from his pronouncements.
Yeah.
So he knows the lessons of history, and he is incorporating those in his policies, in his governance, and all that, which is good. I think every nation should follow that. And Russia has this great gift of the gods, which is it is an autarky. It has every single resource you can imagine, resource rich. It depends on nobody for anything. So that, yeah, from that perspective, Thatcher Maggie was right. And if you can only unleash the true potential and power of your people, then who can stop you? I think that's what every nation should try to do.
Right. And last one by Pranay Kumar, who says high efficient electric motors, car, jet, diesel engines, semiconductors, and furnaces. Is our defense department manufacturing these stuff or importing?
Okay, I'm not totally aware of all these things. Jet engines we're still importing. Obviously, once the TOTs happen, if they do happen, I hope they happen. Then we'll be in a really good space when it comes to jet engines, which is a critical technology. Jet engines, car engines. I think we import. Do they? Do we? Car engines.
They're the same. Engines are the same. Only those 5, 6 people in the world who make.
Okay. Okay.
Now Tata has made something. Previously, they were all using Fiat engines. So
I see. Yeah, we need to seriously, take this
Mahindra, sorry,
in
not Tata. Mahindra has made something. My apologies.
Mahindra. Okay.
Mahindra came up with something, and
Okay.
it's now starting to
You got to
build up as a
iterate.
Make in India project. Yeah,
Yeah, you got to iterate it, improve it incrementally, and over time, over a decade or two, you get really good at it. So you got to
yeah.
start somewhere. I hope at least we've started on these things. Semiconductors, we are starting, I think now, which is okay. At least we're starting. At least we're
Yeah.
there now. Furnaces, I'm not sure. I think furnaces is not
Furnaces
really
we make our
happening.
own. We make
Okay,
on
that's
our
great.
own. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Sarji, thank you so much. I think it was a wonderful discussion. We covered quite a bit, and
Yeah.
good fun discussion where it's kept pretty realistic, because today the world has gone into a phase where I think that's what I take away from our discussion is the world has gone away to a place where it's difficult to analyze it in one go, and because there's just so many moving parts and every guy has his own this thing, and like Jayashankar says, the entire place is in a flux, and the next
Mhm.
5 years are going to be the most dangerous. That means the
Yeah.
most interesting for people like you and me, and to kind of try and make some sense as to what's happening around the place. But thank you so much for helping us make some sense of what's happening around us today, and I hope to see you a lot many more times in helping us doing that further ahead. Thank you so much, and Jai Bharat.
Jai Bharat, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.